I'm going to start.
I need you to make
Exactly.
sure, Ann, that we all have screen sharing capabilities
Yes, you
because
do.
I am
You,
disabled as sharing at the
oh yeah,
moment.
I see it. There we go. Okay, we're going to start. And Todd, I'm going to start by saying hello to everybody and just introducing Arts Wisconsin. And then I'm going to turn it over to you and you can take it away. So welcome everybody. My name is Ann Katz. I'm Director of Arts Wisconsin. We're the state's community cultural development organization. And we're all about creativity as essential to Wisconsin's success in all ways. And if there's anything that's gotten us through the pandemic, it's by being as creative as we possibly can in an unimaginable time. So April is Creative Wisconsin Month. We are celebrating everything creative about the state in this month and after. And today's session about community cultural development planning is celebrating that incredible creativity. So I'm going to turn it over to Todd Schmidt, administrator for the Village of Waunakee. He's going to introduce the panelists. I'm going to take care of the screen sharing, and then away we go. Thank you all.
Thanks, Ann. Hi, everybody. Speaking of creativity, look how I taped all the emails I got for this panel. It's all like taped together, hodgepodge here.
That's a
but
COVID document.
We're gonna make it work. Good afternoon, all. As Ann said, my name is Todd Schmidt. I'm the village administrator in Waunakee, and we have worked really hard in our little village to establish Create Waunakee. Look at that, nice logo there. Branded our work, which Ann knows has been in progress for about 10 years now, and it's kind of really getting some legs under it. So really quick commercial on Create Waunakee. I'm just going to share my screen super quick. Boom. All right.
Oh,
so,
it worked.
Yeah, we do have a website, createwaunakee.com. And today we're diving into cultural planning, more specifically in the realm of creativity. Among the many things we do, I want to just jump down here and show you this. Waunakee is home. This has been an effort to do videos across Waunakee. Now, Waunakee is kind of known as rather homogeneous. A lot of people who look like me. But when you dive into the stories of the people who live here, you start to learn that there is a very unique amount of diversity in our community that we can tell stories about. So one of our projects under Create Waunakee has been to host monthly video interviews with different people that call Waunakee home. So there's about 10 of them that have been done so far with people of all sorts of different background. And our goal has been to really reveal the stories of people who call Waunakee as home. So that's a little thing that we're doing here in Waunakee. And we're going to hear some better stories from our speakers. So today we have, and I'm going to actually kind of turn it to each of you individually to introduce yourself and then jump right into your story. All right. So we'll go one by one, and we're going to have, I believe it's in this order, correct me if I'm wrong, Marci Reynolds, president of Waupaca Community Arts Board, then Rosalind Wolfe, community creative placemaking and economic development coordinator, that's a long one, for Riverworks Development Corp and BID, Business Improvement District in Milwaukee. And then closing it out will be Angie Wright, director at Platteville Arts, Trails, and History Project. Is that the correct order, everyone?
Sure.
You agree?
Sure.
Okay. And Platteville, by the way, I'm a grad of UWP, and I'm antsy to get down there for a Long Island at Uno's. I'm going to get there within the next month or two. So with that, and without further ado, Marci, you are up first, and Rosalind, you're on deck. So Marci, it's all yours.
Thank you very much. So just cut me off if I talk too long, because I have a tendency to blather on. So I'm Marci.
Do that. Remember, we only have till like 10 to 15 minutes each, so I will jump in and poke.
Yeah, do that. That'd be great. Okay, so I'm Marci Reynolds, and I'm the president of the Waupaca Community Arts Board. And we are a small group in a small town. Waupaca city population is about 6,690. and it's sort of a vacation area. So in the summer, I think that swells up to maybe 15,000. I've heard different quotes on that. But the town itself is it's a thriving community, rural community. So when I say thriving, I guess we take anything as thriving. So um, we're we're hanging in there, and we've had our struggles with COVID like everybody else. But our story about cultural planning, just happy to talk about it. And we had a lot of fun with this topic in our town, and we've had a lot of help, I just want to say, from Ann Katz from Arts Wisconsin with our cultural planning. So just to give you a little bit of background of where we came from in our cultural planning. So the Arts Board, we kind of just everybody refers to it as the Arts Board now, but when we started about 20 years ago, maybe 25, we aren't really sure. We started out as a kind of a group of friends that liked to do events. We had one friend that owned a cafe, and so we used to do these really fun dinners that would be, we call them 360 dinners, where the food would reflect the topic, and the wait staff, we were a volunteer waitress corps, and the wait staff would be play acting whatever the topic was. So for instance, when the city decided to do a Civil War reenactment encampment, we researched the peace movement during the Civil War, and we had Civil War, Civil Peace. And so our friend the chef made fried rabbit. We all wore, period clothing. We had a fiddler. We had letters written during the Civil War from mothers to sons, and different Quaker documents that we read. And that's the kind of stuff that we did. And it wasn't always heavy like that. We did a lot of really fun things, like we did Irish events, and we did at Valentine's Day, all of the wait staff were couples, and as people were placing their orders, the wait staff would start to make out at the table, and it was just hilarious. And so this whole movement that we had started became very popular, but sort of restaurant based, and we had a lot of people saying, geez, we wish we could be part of this. And that was our clue that we needed to take it public. And over those first 10 years, we started to venture out of the cafe. We got our nonprofit status. We tried to include people in our group. And that's where it was a little bit difficult because, people say they want to be part of something, but they don't really want to join and work. So the process of building our group and our reputation took us through a lot of different aspects of learning about collaboration and community building, basically. So through our events, our main event was an arts festival in the summer, and we had a Bach festival. And through those events, we did have to interface with city government quite a bit and with other organizations to try to get people to collaborate and join us. And so that's where we really understood a couple of things. One was the arts can actually be good for an economy, and especially in a small town where there's not a lot of industry. And that collaboration is really, really super important because everybody needs everybody to do things. And in our town, and probably like a lot of towns, people tend to do their own thing in their, and I hate this term, but it's silos. People are in their silos, and it's so much easier, to be honest with you, to do your own thing, right? It takes a lot of work to collaborate. And so we kind of developed a goal of collaboration and developing an arts economy. So we started holding these things called arts summits, and we thought summit was a really cool, fancy word to get people to want to come to our meeting. And we had food. We were able to, at that point, by basic coercion, get the city to cough up the money for the food, and we had it at a fancy place. And we had speakers. One year we actually had Ann Katz as the speaker, which was really cool. And so we had these meetings, we had these arts summits, and we did it about every 3 years, and we'd get a few more people each time. But the third time we suggested doing a summit, the city paid attention and the chamber paid attention, and they're like, yeah, we'd like to do that again, but we want to be involved in the planning. And that was a little threatening. And so talk about collaboration. Collaboration's great if you're the one in charge, but we had to kind of say, okay, we're all going to do it together. And that was the greatest, I think, thing that happened. Was that we all came together, and we did about 6 months of planning for this thing. We decided to make it longer than 2 hours. We made it a whole day. We had breakout sessions. We had speakers. And that was really the start of our cultural planning, I think. And I think maybe Anne would agree with that. Um, so we came together, we had different breakout sessions, and then after that really successful event, which I'm just going to say, you got to have these kinds of events at a place that you can get drinks, okay? It's very important for attendance. So anyway, after that, some of the breakout session groups continued to meet, and a couple of them, I mean, they had really great intentions and really exciting goals. Not a lot of the goals actually happened, but what did happen was people came together after that summit. And there were people from different walks of life and different organizations. And the one group that really stuck was the group that was focused on collaboration, funny enough. And that group had several little iterations, but it eventually turned into a group that um, worked with Ann Katz and our city um, and developed the Waupaca Arts and Culture Plan. So I'm just going to put a couple things up on the screen here. Oh my gosh, I lost the one thing I was going to put up, but all right, well, I'll just put the Arts and Culture Plan up right now.
We've got about 3 minutes, Marci.
Oh my God, okay.
Maybe
See?
4 if you're nice.
See what I mean? I talk too much. All right. So this is the arts and culture plan that we came up with. So the summit was actually started to plan it in 2015. Then in 2016 we held the event and we wrote the plan, I think from 16 to 17, and it was published in 2018. And it had 4 goals or 4 areas of interest: the arts as a community resource, the arts as a family resource, the arts and quality of life, and then connecting and strengthening the arts sector network and the community. So once this was published, and that was a huge process. So Anne and her partner came and did a lot of focus groups and came up with a lot of information to create this plan. And they set some robust goals with 1, 2, and 3 year goals for them. And then this was approved by our city council, and now we're coming upon, I think it's it's 2021. Hello. So we're going to be updating this, and we are planning another summit for fall. So my message, I guess, is with all of this, I wish I had another hour because it's all about relationships. You have to build this stuff. You can't just come into a town cold and say, let's start an arts and culture group or plan. It's about connecting with people on a personal level, on a business level, through events, and building that trust and seeing the common goals and working towards those goals. And I think by having those previous summits where we talked about this concept of arts as an economy, and then through the years as our events actually reinforced that and sort of were evidence that it was true, people really started to buy into it. And so now we are coming upon the year where we're going to renew our vows, I want to say, like we're married or something. It's dumb. But renew our cultural plan and set new goals. I think that what's going to happen this fall is we're going to have even more people that have more energy to give to this because they've seen the consistent development and relationship building, and they've seen the results. And I'll tell you, here's a pandemic silver lining, is that with all of our events being canceled for the last year, our retailers have literally seen the financial impact of not having arts events for about a year. And so I think that we feel that that's why when we did our letter writing campaign to raise funds for our own organization last fall, we tripled the amount that we usually get. And that was with a letter campaign. So that was pretty phenomenal. I think that people get what we're doing and they see it as a viable important thing for a community to embrace the arts in all those different ways. So that's my story.
Nicely done, Marci. Congratulations on all the success. Getting your city to back what you're doing, my goodness.
I know. Isn't
Way
that
to
fun?
go. I do see about 10 people here on the Zoom with us. There's probably more watching on Facebook, but how about after everybody's done speaking, Angie, then Rosalynn, and then Marci, Rosalynn, and Angie, put your contact info and website into the chat. So then people who maybe want to do follow-up with you with more questions can then grab that info and circle back. So, and there will be time for Q&A at the end. So thank you, Marci. Next up, Rosalind Wolfe, welcome. Remember to give a brief introduction if you could, Rosalynn, and then tell us your story. Angie, you're on deck.
Sure, thank you, Marcy. That was really good hearing about what you guys have been doing and how seeing how passionate you are about it is also really infectious. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
I am Rosalind Wolfe with Riverworks Development Corporation here in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, working on the Beerline Trail. My official title, as Todd said, is very long, but I'm the Community Creative Placemaking and Economic Development Coordinator. As we talk about culture, the idea behind creative placemaking is to honor the various cultures that exist in the space and to use that to tie people to that space, to give them control, give them the power, so that they feel like they can direct, and they have control over the area that they live in. So um, our major project working on now is the Beerline Trail Neighborhood Development Project. And although our main thing is the Lifeways plan, which is the design for linear park on the trail, the project itself really encompasses economic development, community development, revitalization, jobs, training, and bringing folks together. We call it a Houghton Divide over here, and it separates two communities, River West and Harambe, River West and Harambe. So it's all about making sure that the Keith Avenue corridor is a vital place in the Harambe neighborhood, as well as creating a sense of economic development in this area. So that's the whole project. The other thing is the Beerline Trail is a rail turn trail. It's happening all over the country. Here, well, the importance of that is that that rail used to bring materials for beers. It's like a Wisconsin staple, right? To this area, there's lots and lots of industry that used to be here. We lost that industry, unfortunately, and with that, job. So, what research has shown is that trails actually bring a lot of development to the community, and it actually becomes a transportation corridor for folks. And so we are actually connecting the Beerline Trail to the 30th Street corridor. As years pass and time goes on, what you'll see is a underpass, a tunnel that actually continues along on the trail past Capitol. Our section that Riverworks really works on is Bremen to Capitol. The extension is what we call it now. It won't be an extension once it goes further along. But right now, it's the extension is Keith and Richards to Capitol. And on that, we're going to do this linear park. If I could just share, I'll share the design with you. So what you start to see as we move forward in the development of this park is this whole linear park, and so there are greenhouses, there are lots of trees. Thinking about septed and how we make sure that we're planning and also make people feel safe is that the trees are specifically designed so that the line of sight is there. So you'll have the tops of the trees that have lots of leaves, but then you have this whole bark that you can actually see through. There are these huge gateways that are this welcoming element to the space. We're working on a connected building now that will sit on the corner of Keith and Richards that will act as that hub for this park and the whole the trail itself. And then we'll house a cafe of the local business owner, Coolumba Juice and Coffee, formerly known as Center Street Wellness. It used to be on Center and King Drive. And then they'll have community space in the back for people to make community all year round, right? We don't have a very long summer season here. And so this space will allow us to have that community building here. We do call ourselves the Creative District. I know I've heard that from another neighborhood, but we call ourselves the Creative District. Our Business Improvement District house tons of creative spaces and makers in the area, in addition to Harambe and River West neighborhoods. Just a lot of artists of different genres right here in the neighborhood. So we want to use that and capitalize on that to build this linear park, as well as the programming that would go in it. right now, where we are is putting together a feasibility study that we can see, how much we can raise for this park. It's about a $7 million project in this that's been being invested into this area is our goal. And then we have the adjacent buildings that we're trying to ensure the community has input on what goes in them, and being very conscious and intentional about who we support, coming into this area, because we know it brings development. What we don't want to do is also bring displacement. And so we have what's called a guiding lens group that we're working with. That'll be like the community arm of the Beer Line Trail, so that as we we're developing equitably. We also have a document called the Equitable Implementation Plan that really guides how we move forward so that people are included in this space. So the linear park starts over here. This is Keith and Richard. You can see my mouse, I hope, hopefully so. Keith and Richards, you'll have this connector building. You have open spaces for just play and relaxation. This to the trees. You'll have play spaces and workout equipment, greenhouses, and then you'll also have these spaces for a stage. It's autonomous boxes, and these boxes you can use them for whatever, right? So if you want to have a family barbecue, some kind of programming, creative craft time around them, you can. So really want to open up this space so that it is a community space that folks feel comfortable coming to and sharing and building together. If there are any questions, I would love to answer them afterwards. Thank you.
Don't tell my boss, but I think I want to move to the Beer Line Trail neighborhood. That sounds amazing. Wow.
Go on down.
Yeah, I'm really proud of that work you're doing there. Way to go.
Thank you.
Great job. So, all right. Last but not least, right, Angie?
Hopefully, yes.
You've been so patient. Again, introduce yourself, and we look forward to hearing about the work that you are doing.
Okay. Well, my name is Angie Wright, and I'm in Platteville, Wisconsin. I wear a couple different hats here in Platteville. Professionally, I'm a freelance grant consultant, and I do grant writing and things like that for people basically around the country. And then I also work part-time at the Mining and Rollo Jameson Museums here in Platteville. The project I'm going to be talking about today, I was also the project director on. That was a short-term consulting project, I guess, that I did when we had the grant that funded this. And I'm going to actually share my screen because I did put together a little presentation so that you wouldn't have to necessarily watch me the whole time. So let me pull that up. Oh, that's not the right one. Hold on.
That sounds fun too.
I can't get back.
While you're pulling it up, plug for the Rollo Jameson Museum. Super cool place. I'm a Platteville grad. Do they still send people down the shaft there?
They do. Yeah, and I'm sorry, I'm having a hard time getting back to my meeting controls here. I can't even get back to the. Can you see my screen right now?
I am looking at something that says path.
Okay, it's wonderful. I'm sorry, my screen was showing something different, so I was confused. So
funded by the NEA Our Town program.
We are good to go then. I apologize for that. So,
okay.
So Platteville Arts, Trails, and History, otherwise known as PATH, was funded by the National Endowment for the Arts Our Town program. It ran from July of 2017 through June of 2019. Let's see if I can get this to, okay. And PATH was an arts and cultural planning project. It was a partnership between the City of Platteville, Arts Wisconsin, and community members. And the goals were to bring the community together to decide what makes Platteville special and to determine how we could use culture, history, arts, and trails to promote our community. The outcomes of the project were a creative community plan, and then Chalk and Cheese Fest was a celebration project. So the idea for some kind of an arts and culture planning project had been brewing in the community for a few years. Platteville has a pretty strong history of supporting arts and culture. There was a Shakespeare Fest that ran for many years. There was a juried art fair that ran for many years. However, in 2013, the city had decided to dissolve the Arts Board. And since that time, the community had kind of lacked the infrastructure that nurtures and supports the creative economy. And so people felt like we needed a process to sort of revitalize that. The museum director at the time, Diana Bolander, called together a group of folks along with me, and we explored different opportunities for funding and ideas for the project, and ultimately decided to apply for National Endowment for the Arts Our Town funding. And the group decided on the PATH name, partially because they wanted a simple acronym that was easy to say, but they also liked the visual of a path, because paths connect people, places, and things, and they thought that that was an important part of the project. So during the planning process, we had a core team that met monthly. It was about 12 people that represented lots of different sectors in the community. We had several community meetings, an open house, community conversations. We did a What Do You Love About Platteville postcard and photo campaign. We did several small group presentations to civic groups and things like that. The sophomore class at the high school participated in one of our planning events during Career Day. You can actually see them, that photo in the lower right is the sophomore class participating. And then we had some events that were focused specifically on the creative sector. So we had a focus group, and then we had a brainstorming session gathering with them. We also did 2 community surveys, again, one aimed at the general public and one aimed at the creative sector. And we allowed people to self-select as members of the creative sector. We didn't define that. If they thought they were part of the creative sector, they were part of the creative sector as far as we were concerned. This is just a few photos of some of the other items we did. You can see some postcards. The What Do You Love photo campaign was there. There's a photo, one of the community meetings down in the lower right. We did sidewalk poetry during April for National Poetry Month. And then the lower left-hand photo was part of our core team who walked in the Dairy Days parade to advertise an upcoming community event. So here's the Platteville Creative Community Plan, which was one of our outcomes. That is available on the website, which is located at the City of Platteville. So it's www.platteville.org/path. You can download a copy of that if you're interested. So the Creative Community Plan contained 4 main goals, 12 objectives, and then an implementation plan that included action steps and suggestions of who might lead the work towards the various objectives. I'm not going to go through all of those. I just wanted to list the 4 main goals here today. It was building leadership and capacity, increasing visibility. This came up all the time. People kept saying that they didn't know about events until after they happened and things like that. Cultivating and supporting the creative economy, and increasing opportunities for community members and visitors to experience diverse and engaging culture, history, arts, and trails. At the end of the planning process, one of the goals of the NEA funded grant was to have a celebration project. And the form of that project was determined through the planning process. And the project was Chalk and Cheese Fest, which took place on June 22nd of 2019. And again, that came out of the various community engagement events. There was interest in doing chalk art. There was interest in doing some kind of a food festival. Cheese came up several times, of course, being in Wisconsin. So we combined the two and held Chalk and Cheese Fest. It was a full day event. We brought in 4 professional paid chalk artists who did larger drawings sort of in the center of the park. And then this park is has a crisscross of sidewalk across the 1 block area of the park. And so then we also invited members of the public to come in and draw as well. So there was an adult category and a youth category. You can see some of those photos here, folks working on their chalk drawings. Emmy Roth, one of our local cheese plants, came in as our big cheese sponsor for the day, and they offered free samples all day long at their table. And then we also brought in cheese carver, Troy Landwehr, and he did carve that block of cheddar into the mining scene over the course of the day. And people could watch him work and got to sample the outcuts of the cheese block. And then Actually, at the end of the event, the museums actually auctioned off the cheese block at their 4th of July event a few weeks later. It had been kept in a refrigerator during the impending time, and it was auctioned off during Heritage Day on 4th of July. And some lucky winner was very, very happy to get to bring that to their 4th of July party and impress all their friends. The grant officially, funding from the grant ran out in June of 2019. And again, I was funded through that grant to be the project director. I have remained in as part of the PATH group, now as well, not just as a volunteer. There is a smaller core team that is still meeting monthly. We have started to try to do some events, Fifth Fridays, and I'll talk a little bit more about those in just a second. But some of the things that also happened in the community since since the PATH planning process, and I can't say that PATH necessarily caused all of these, but I think the growing interest and talk about art certainly spurred some further development. But the Roundtree Gallery put up their mural you see in the center of the screen, and that I believe is titled "Coming Out of COVID," and it's supposed to sort of indicate some of the isolation and whatnot, and wanting of togetherness of COVID. And the idea behind that is it is printed on a panel, so that will be rotated out after about a year, and the gallery will commission a new artist every year or so to put a new mural up on the side of their building. The two photos near the top are both done by are both sculptures done by Bill Mitchell, a local artist, and they are placed along the Roundtree Branch Trail here in Platteville. And the Platteville Community Arboretum, which is a volunteer organization responsible for doing most of the trail maintenance for the city-owned Roundtree Branch Trail, commissioned these two art pieces to be placed along the trail. And there will actually be 2 additional pieces that'll be placed later this summer. The 2 bottom photos show a product called Rainworks and sidewalk art. So the PATH group did secure a small grant late last fall to purchase some Rainworks product and stencils, and we will be installing those on the sidewalks around downtown Platteville this spring once the temperature is warm enough that we can do that. And in case you're not familiar with it, Rainworks is a product, it's like a paint, but when you apply it and when the sidewalk is dry, as you can see in the photo, you can't tell it's there at all. But when it rains, it repels the water, so then your artwork shows up on rainy days. And then we are also planning for Chalk and Cheese 2021. We had planned for a 2020 event that got canceled due to COVID. So we are moving forward with August 14th for Chalk and Cheese 2021. And now real quick, Fifth Fridays. One of the other things that came out of the planning process was that creative sector folks wanted more opportunities to network and talk and gather. So PATH started doing what we're calling Fifth Fridays, which are creative sector gatherings and networking events. This was the first one that was held on January 31st of 2020 at the Roundtree Gallery in Platteville. We had food donated by a local business. We got a local business to sponsor a musician who played and sang during the 2-hour event, or 3.5-hour event, I guess. And we had about 80 people that attended that event at the Roundtree Gallery. It seemed to be really well received, and people really enjoyed the event. The second Fifth Friday was canceled also due to COVID, and we haven't had the opportunity to reinvigorate them yet, but we are talking about trying to do that in 2021. This is just some word art of all the various ideas that came out of the planning process, all the different public engagement events we had. We did keep all of those. They're part of an appendix in our creative community plan, but this just gives you some ideas of the breadth, I guess, of some of what our community came up with as ideas for things they would like to do. Thank you very much, and I'll be happy to answer questions later. PATH does have a Facebook page you can follow at Platteville PATH on Facebook. We do not have an official website other than the subsection of the city's website.
Nice, nicely done. Angie, make sure you put your contact info in the chat there so people can grab it. And if you didn't, Rosalynn, oh, there we go. Perfect timing. Angie, there's a lot more than a giant M in Platteville.
Can I just say something? Can I just say something, Todd? I'll say that we're recording this webinar, and when I post it, I'll make sure that people's contact information is out there as well. So hopefully you'll be inundated with questions, but we do have time for questions and discussion and other issues.
We do. I was commenting that there's a lot more than a giant M in Platteville, isn't there, Angie?
There is a lot more than, although we did talk about trying to incorporate the M more into the arts and cultural events that happen in the community as well. We've talked about trying to do concerts on top of it. Actually, the high school students had wonderful ideas about the M. They want a water slide coming down from the top of it and things like that.
I thought you were going to say that the M is actually an upside down W that stands for right.
Can't take credit for everything.
All right.
I think the water slide is a really good idea.
Yeah.
I agree.
Well, this is great. Anne, why don't you come back and join us? I know you hate being on camera, but we've got a good 15, 20 minutes here where we're willing to hang out and answer any questions folks might have. So feel free to stick comments, questions into the chat, or jump in, raise your hand, and Anne can probably allow people in who are attending to ask them live.
Yes, I think I can allow people to talk even. So if you raise your hand, all these things going on, or put something in the chat.
At least one attendee should at least do that just to see if Anne can figure it out. So that's a challenge.
Yeah, that's right. Okay, Nicole, you are now able to talk.
Wow, nice job, Anne.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thanks for being here, Nicole.
Absolutely. So I'm Nicole Foster. I'm from Northland College in Ashland, and really fantastic projects and presentations. So thank you all for sharing. I had a question for Rosalynn. My background, I've done some creative placemaking, and one of the challenges, of course, is how do you make that inclusive, and also the potential impact of those projects and how that could catalyze gentrification, for example. So I was kind of curious about the trail project, the linear parks. How are you addressing that? Are there things that we can do, to mitigate that possibility, or to ensure that that kind of development stays in the hands of residents and doesn't lead to them being displaced?
Yeah, so that's a great question. And we actually had a community meeting last night with all the women cogs, and community is able to join because there is a huge and justified concern. So one of the things creative placemaking, as you know, calls for people to be included, and those that are most affected, right? And for them to have the power over, so that they can determine the pace and who's present, right? So for instance, you're working on a development, we don't just want to speak to the developers. We want to have the community, the developers, artists, etc., in the mix of things together, not having these separate meetings, so that everyone can hear each other's concerns. The other thing is we do have a plan that's put together with the Build Trail Leadership Committee, which I'm on, and Grace. And it is called the Equitable Implementation Plan. I can send that out to folks who are interested. It did win a Mandy Award last year, but it helps us to ensure as we follow it that we are developing in an equitable manner. The other thing is Riverworks is a community-based organization, so we have a financial clinic that helps people increase their credit scores. There's some bit of a job connection with jobs and trying to find them training. We also work with the city on anti-displacement. And so I know that people's taxes, have gone up outside of the trail. And so we work with the city to make sure that people have access to assistance. And they are still continuing. It's been 2 years now. And they're still continuing with that project. The idea is to have private investors and companies to add to that fund to keep it going. And so we do have to advocate and participate in policies like that help the community to stay in place, but also jobs. We're doing a connected building now. And so the contractor they're working with is being intentional about having folks from the community be the ones that are hired. People that live in the community be the contractors, right? And so we're trying to find every step the ways that we are bringing folks in and not excluding them.
Thank you. That's amazing. Thank you so much for thinking so holistically and comprehensively. That sounds incredible. Thanks, Rosalind.
Yeah.
Thank you for the question.
And I'll just add to what Rosalind just said. This project has been going on for at least 5 and more years than that. And so it's ebbed and flowed, I'm sure, but the guiding principles have kept it going. I mean, planning so often happens and then people think the plan is over. Great. But then the real work actually begins
That's
after the
right.
plan is in place, right? So that's one of the things about this plan, the work that you're doing is that it is ongoing. And I think the fact that you've got the Community Development Corporation involved helps keep it going. And you've got all those partners who are committed to it. And by the way, I would really like that job title. I think that's the coolest job title in the world. It sounds like so much fun.
And village administrator doesn't sound fun.
Fun. I think Rosalind's job sounds way more fun. No offense meant.
I agree. Nicole, thanks for the question.
Yeah, and I just thank you, Nicole. And I just want to note that Nicole is new to Northland College and to Wisconsin, and she's already been making a lot of a big difference and really doing some great work up north. And we want to make sure that we get her out around the state because she's an expert on this idea of creative placemaking and community cultural development. So thank you for being here, Nicole.
Great.
Let's see. Are there any other questions or other things that people want to talk about? You know, Marci, you could have gone on.
Yeah, I
want to mention one thing. I kind of misspoke. You know, I introduced myself from the Waupaca Community Arts Board, but I'm really speaking on behalf of the Waupaca community or the Waupaca area Arts and Culture Network, of which the Arts Board is part. It's a network of organizations, and that's who's doing this community planning work. I think I just got all nervous and just forgot to leave the most important thing out. And that network was a result of that last arts summit and kind of followed the arts and culture plan. The fourth point was to get the groups to work together. So I kind of missed out my whole point, and I'm really sorry about that. But I did post the network Facebook page so everybody could, you know, go and just, we don't have a website, but we're a network, so we're kind of a disorganized, organized group of people working together. So that was supposed to be the point of my whole talk. I'm sorry.
Well, but can I just say that that's a result of the planning process that this network came to be.
Yes.
So
we actually were really efficient with our time, and I kind of feel like, you know, if there's one missing point, unless there's other hands that come up, if you had another minute, what other piece of information would you like those viewing to know about the work that you're doing or your organization? Marci, go for it.
I guess I would say that since the pandemic started, the realization of how important the arts are, I think, has really sunk home with so many people. You know, on a national level, we've attended webinars where, you know, opera companies are realizing that they weren't reaching people the way they thought they were. And so I think things are really going to change. I think we need to stay grassroots, connected to our communities, and like the work that you're doing, Rosalind, and making sure that community people are involved in it. That's so key. It can't just be people who are in offices running organizations. You really have to be connected to every level of your community to make it fit into your community. And I think with the pandemic, the value of the arts, people really missed being able to hear live music or just to even be together. And that's part of our cultural connection. So this is a really great time for the arts, even though I think it's also a hard time for the arts, but I think it's a great time for the arts because we can really, we're all on the same page now. We know what we were missing, and we know what the arts bring to everybody's personal life. And that's so important. It's a piece that we didn't value as much as we do now. So I think we should all jump on that.
Rosalynn, what would you say in your extra minute?
Yeah, so two things. One, I would just invite folks to continue to watch how Linear Park develops. I want to invite folks down to use it. In May, we'll have 2 huge building-sized murals that are completed, done by the Dale Hill local artist here, with the kind of mentor, Walter Hood, who's who did the Lifeways plan, and he's a national, international landscape architect based out of Oakland, California, who the community picked like to do this plan. So please keep watch. Please come and visit. This will be a destination spot, not just for Harambe River West neighborhoods, but for Milwaukee as a city and Wisconsin as a whole. The other really important thing that I want to make sure I say is that it's very important that we remember this equity piece in art. We remember that, the time that we're in, and use it to really ensure that we're, I don't want to get political, but building back better. Actually, kind of like that slogan, but that we're being very inclusive and equitable as we begin to develop and use the arts. Let's be different in how we continue on doing things and capitalize on this present time that we're in, this racial reckoning that this country, the state, the city, county, et cetera, is going through right now.
I'll second that. Well said. Angie, do you have, I'm going to offer you another minute. What do you have?
I'm not sure that I have anything super new and insightful, but I will second, I guess, Marci's focus on the collaboration. I think that is really just key. And that is something that I will say PATH is struggling with a little bit, is continuing that collaboration now that the official project is done. Again, having COVID come in the middle has definitely thrown a wrench in it. And I'm hoping that maybe as things return a little bit more to what we used to know as normal, things will, that might be a little bit easier to be able to build that collaboration again. And I guess I will touch with Rosalind's project as well, in that the David Caney Roundtree Branch Trail here in Platteville is also sort of, the trails were a key part of PATH as well. And that trail is definitely a community center. And I think having some art on that trail now is really a wonderful way to bring it into the community, because it gets used pretty much by everybody in the community, and people from all around come to use. It's a 3-mile paved and lighted trail that the community put in a couple of years ago. So.
Nice. Hey, Ann, I've got a question for you.
Yeah.
You must be like glowing as you hear these really great stories of communities enduring in the craziest of days, and taking arts to a really special level. As you're watching,
I wanted you guys to talk and to tell people about it.
Yeah. So as you're seeing this happening in the state, how are you feeling about, what's the level of encouragement that you're feeling, and what's the next step for Arts Wisconsin to like hitch the wagon to this?
Oh my gosh, that is such a good question. I'm, first of all, thank you all for telling your stories, and we will spread them around and keep helping you tell them. I'm continually in awe of the creativity that is out there. It's amazing to me, especially in the last year, but always what people think they can't do, but somehow do with not enough resources, not enough time, but somehow things keep happening that truly are amazing. In the bigger picture, sometimes I say that I've been talking about the creative economy and creative placemaking since the last millennium, and I have. And now it's a thing. Now it's not just a thing. It's a kind of a living opportunity, and not challenge, but it's alive. It really is. It's that I chose these 4 communities, but I know that there are 100 other that could have also talked about their successes. I won't say failures, the challenges, the partnerships, the relationships. People are really trying, and what Arts Wisconsin is trying to do is help those people, organizations, businesses, and communities do the work. And I will say that in the last 5 to 10 years, we've really ramped up the whole community comprehensive, bringing people together to talk about their future and take action on it themselves. We are actually moving towards a model, a new transformation, kind of the next stage in our organization where we really will embrace this kind of work. I don't want to give too much away, but there's going to be, but create will be part of the title. Because it's not it is about the arts, but it's not about the arts, but it is about the arts. It's really about that creative spirit that everyone has and that communities have, and kind of unleashing it and planning for it. So to get back to the point of this webinar, when people come together for common good, even though they disagree on many other things, but if they can find that common good, then as you have all demonstrated, they can accomplish great things. And one more, so thank you for the work you're doing. One more thing I'll say is, personally, well, what I find touching, amazing, and exhausting sometimes is the human part of it, the personalities and politics that shape every single interaction. You could all talk about those in great detail if I didn't have the recording on. But humans are doing this, and humans are, we all have our issues, and yet somehow people come together to find that common good. So I feel quite inspired by the work that you're all doing, and my job is to help make it happen.
Nice. We're getting close to the magic hour. There's 7 people hanging on though. And if one of you 7 have a question that you will, if you don't ask it, you will beat yourself up for months. Now is the time to raise your hand and Ann will bring you in, which she's entirely capable of doing. We saw her do it.
That's right. I know how to do it now. I should also say, to add to Todd's dramatics, if you do have a question and you want to ask it, here's my email address, and you can ask it, or you can ask the other people on the call because they put their email addresses in. So we'll, it's all an ongoing conversation. That's what we're always aiming for. So
somehow.
Somebody, Nicole has another question. I love this. Go ahead, Nicole.
I hope that's okay, but of course I could talk about this all day and all night. So.
Right, exactly.
So Marci, you talked a bit about this, so I'd just like to kind of hear more than anyone else who can kind of pipe in suggestions. So, when you're starting this process, wanting to start this conversation around a cultural plan, and how do you open people to risk? When people kind of think art and culture, part of the value of that, of course, is discomforting people and challenging people. And I find, so because I'm up in Ashland, and there's a particular, I think, aesthetic and heritage that gets valued and made very visible. I don't know, it's wonderful. I mean, but I don't know how inclusive it is. How do you open up folks who, we've always done things a certain way. When we think about kind of our main street and what we want on our main street, I mean, suggestions for, getting that buy-in. I mean, I thought the Art Summit was a great, that process sounded amazing. So I guess maybe speak to that, and like how long did that take, I guess, to get folks kind of on board and open to kind of new ideas. I'll stop there.
It does take time. Am I muted? No. It does take time, and it takes a lot of reaching out and effort, and I guess just basic relationship building, and knowing who you want to be included, and knowing who can help further the process, I guess. I mean, I hate to sound, to answer that question sometimes because it sounds like you're conniving and manipulative, but if you're living in a small town, you're going to figure out who you need to talk to. And I think as an outsider, you have to tread lightly, because small towns, one of the banes and the beauty of small towns is it's people's town. And so that has to be taken into consideration, knowing what a town wants versus what you want for the town is a big, I remember being at an arts seminar at some point in Madison, Ann Katz, one of the few ones that I actually attended. And at the breakout session, somebody was saying how, maybe you think that you're going to come into this town and that it would be great to have a symphony, but if the town wants mud wrestling, there's a gap. And so you're not going to get buy-in. And so how do you bridge the gap? And it's through
Is that where you
relationships.
combine symphony with mud
Well,
wrestling?
that's always
Is that-
been my idea, honestly. And that's actually, honestly, that's a very funny way to look at it is how do you come together with some of these ideas, you know? I mean, if it means having a chamber orchestra in a cow field, or if it means having country music played by classical musicians, or everybody in the jug band can be part of the orchestra. I mean, it's about respecting everybody for where they're at. And I think that's another lesson from the arts is almost like I want to go, oh, the arts. And that's what's happened to the arts. And yet everybody's creative. And so when you put it up here, it's excluding so many people. Not that there shouldn't be high level things, you know, not that everybody should get a top notch grade at solo and ensemble, but how do we embrace everybody and include everybody? That's what's the most important thing. And so I know that's not a short answer, but it's important. I think I feel for you being in a small northern Wisconsin town with your liberal ideas. Be careful that you don't, burn bridges before you even, and I'm sorry to be so direct, but I think that that's what can easily happen is if you have too much enthusiasm for something that's not there, it's not going to be easy to convince people.
For sure, as I put my comments. Yeah. And I think, but with that said, it's interesting because meeting Anne and Anne has connected me with folks locally, and I think, as you say, it's about building relationships and building those connections and identifying folks that are excited and passionate, and what can we build together and can we do together, and just start small and
well, like I
from a
think
joyful, fun place,
Where Angie has really hit the mark is chalk and cheese. What a great event. I mean, who's going to argue with that?
Nobody. I did see a
And then
question.
you have your chalk and cheese, and you might have one of the breakouts might be somebody playing the violin. I mean, who knew Waupaca would have a thriving Bach festival, for God's sakes? There are closet people all over that want to engage at all levels of the arts, but first you have to bring them to the table,
There is a face. Oh, Angie, you're muted.
You're muted, Angie.
You're muted.
Yep. So I was just going to add that the chalk and cheese in 2019, because we were fortunate to have some of that NEA grant funding still, we had live music actually, I'm sorry. We had a DJ for the first half of the day, and then we had live music for the second half of the day. We also had a caricature artist that was there drawing, that was doing free caricatures for folks. And then in addition to, the cheese samples that we brought in, we did have the local Mexican restaurant had a small booth and was selling Mexican street corn. And we had a few food trucks that were selling various, I think one of them had lemonade, like homemade fresh squeezed lemonade, and one of them had pizzas and things like that. So we were trying to bring in other aspects of local culture as well.
There is a question that Anne posted for us from Facebook. Do we have any advice on how small rural villages can begin at a starting point to create and cultivate a creative community? I'll take a first stab at it, and then you guys can chime in. My first thought is, if you haven't, perform some level of asset inventory to know what lies beneath the surface in your community. If you ask the right questions and engage your community to learn what is creative that they have never told their friends or family about, you will start to learn things that you can then build upon. So one thing we did in Waunakee as we started this work 10 years ago is we hosted an event we called Imagination Celebration, and you came to it. It was a no barrier, free event for the public to demonstrate that which makes them unique, creative, and innovative. And we had over 1,500 people in our community of 12,000 either participate directly or attend to learn about that which makes us creative. And in that environment, we discovered things. And we had people rubbing up against one another with creative thought that then sparked stuff. So that was our entry, our entry into this work. And from that, here we are today with a brand called Create Waunakee that's got legs under it. But it started by discovering our assets in a way that is barrier free. So that's what we did in our little village. Other panelists, thoughts on that question? How'd you get started?
I think Marci kind of covered the origins of the cultural plan in Waupaca, and Angie too, and Rosalynn, maybe, you might want to go on, talk a little bit more about how this all came to be. If any of you want to add anything else.
I'm not from Milwaukee is a small village, so that's why I wasn't. But I think that Marci and Angie both, the collaboration is so important, and finding out, who knows what, who's willing to do what, and building those relationships. I don't care where you are. That relationship building is extremely important. I love what Todd said about doing that internal asset finding and building, because that's super key. So, and there's actually an organization that's called Be In Between that started to just do stuff on the trail before it was even paid. It didn't even have a way, and they put out so many different amazing things. People started to take notice of it and wanting to get involved because it was so amazing. Now, I'm not saying put things out that the city hasn't approved, but sometimes it's like you just have to start, and then people begin to catch on.
I think one of the main things to say is keep at it. Mm-hmm. If people say, oh, why would we do that? That's a dumb idea. Never did that before. Prove them wrong.
I think it's important to try to connect with retailers too. And that for a number of reasons. I know that we all know that events and the arts can actually increase revenue for retailers, because when people go downtown, they're more likely to shop. And so when you can have an event that includes retailers in any way that they can jump in, whether they have a window display or have a little concert in their store, any way that they can get involved in events, because if you can get them to work with you, that goes a long way towards working with the city.
Good. Well, we've hit past 4 and we've done it. We've got a whole hour of content here. Do you care to take a closing word?
I want to thank our panelists. Bravo, all of you, for the work you're doing and for talking about it so succinctly. Todd, thank you for facilitating so well. I will say that I should have been better about checking Facebook Live before this. I forgot about that, but I'll just end by saying all of this information will be available afterwards. We'll get links and we'll get contact information and keep that conversation going. So one new message. Thank you all for what you're doing, and enjoy the spring if it ever comes. Take care.
You will, everybody.
Thank you all for inviting me.
Bye-bye.